"You too, you cowering slob Snarby, you. Get behind this thing and push," Jason said. "What has happened?" Myka asked. "Have you started this revolution? If so, I will give no aid." "We're escaping, if that's all right with you. Just I, Ijale, and a guide to show us the way. You don't have to come." "I will join you. There is nothing criminal in escaping from these barbarians." "Very nice of you to say so. Now push. I want this steamobile in the center, far from all the walls and pointing toward the desert. Down the valley, I guess. Is that right, Snarby?" "Down the valley, sure. That's the way." His voice was still rasping from the earlier throttling, Jason was pleased to notice. "Stop it here, and everyone aboard. Grab onto those bars I've bolted along the side so you won't get bounced off. If we ever start moving, that is." Jason took a quick look through his workshop to make sure everything they might need was already loaded, then reluctantly climbed aboard himself. He blew out the lantern and they sat there in the darkness, their faces lit from below by the flickering glow from the firebox, while the tensions mounted. There was no way to measure time, since each second took an eternity to drag by. The walls of the worksite cut off any view of the outside, and within a few moments imagination had peopled the night with silent hordes creeping towards them, huddling about the thin barrier of leather, ready to swoop down and crush them in an instant. "Let's run for it," Snarby gurgled, and tried to jump from the platform. "We're trapped here. We'll never get away." Jason tripped him and knocked him flat, then pounded his head against the floor planks a few times until he quieted. "I can sympathize with that poor man," Myka said severely. "You are a brute, Jason, to punish him for his natural feelings. Cease your sadistic attack and join me in a prayer." "If this poor man you are so sorry for had simply done his duty and watched the boiler, we would all be safely away from here by now. And if you have enough breath for a prayer, put it to better use by blowing into the firebox. It's not going to be wishes or prayers that get us out of here, just a head of steam." A howled battle cry was echoed by massed voices, and a squad of D'zertanoj burst in through the entrance, and at the same instant the rear of the leather wall went down and more armed men swarmed over it. The immobile caroj was trapped between the two groups of attackers, who laughed happily as they charged. Jason cursed and lit 4 molotails at the same time and hurled them 2 and 2 in opposite directions. Before they hit he had jumped to the steam valve and wound it open. With a hissing clank the caroj shuddered and got under way. For the moment the attackers were held back by the walls of flame, and screamed even louder as the machine moved away at right angles from between their two groups. The air whistled with crossbow bolts, but most were badly aimed and only a few thudded into the baggage. With each revolution of the wheels their speed picked up, and when they hit the walls the hides parted with a creaking snap. Strips of leather whipped at them, then they were through. The shouts and the fires grew dimmer behind them as they streaked down the valley at a suicidal pace, hissing, rattling, and crashing over the bumps. Jason clung to the tiller and shouted for Myka to come relieve him, since if he let go of the thing they would turn and crash in an instant, and as long as he held it he couldn't cut down the steam. Some of this finally penetrated to Myka because he crawled forward, grasping desperately to every handhold until he crouched beside Jason. "Grab this tiller and hold it straight and steer around anything big enough to see." As soon as the steering was taken over, Jason worked his way back to the engine and throttled down. They slowed to a clanking walk, then stopped completely. Ijale moaned, and Jason felt as if every inch of his body had been beaten with hammers. There was no sign of pursuit, since it would be at least an hour before they could raise steam in the caroj, and no one on foot could possibly have matched their headlong pace. The lantern he had used earlier had vanished during the wild ride, so Jason dug out another one of his own construction. "On your feet, Snarby," he ordered. "I've cracked us all out of slavery, so now it is time for you to do some of the guiding that you were telling me about. Walk ahead with this light and pick out a nice smooth track going in the right direction. I never did have a chance to build headlights for this machine, so you will have to do instead." Snarby climbed down unsteadily and walked out in front. Jason opened the valve a bit and they clattered forward on his trail as Myka turned the tiller to follow. Ijale crawled over and settled herself against Jason's side, shivering with cold and fright. He patted her shoulder. "Relax," he said. "From now on this is just a pleasure trip." End of Part 4 of The Ethical Engineer by Harry Harrison.